Have you noticed that people are paying more attention to you in terms of the sobriety journey? Like,
Yes. Yes, I have. In fact, one of the coolest things for me was, I guess it was 5 months of sobriety or so. And I met my son at a football game in Mississippi State. He's a college student at Mississippi State. He'll be a junior this year. And we left to go get concessions. And I asked him, I said, do you want a beer? He's 20, most of he doesn't drink a lot. But I said, hey, just trying to be a cool dad. He's like, no, I just want a Coke. And I got a water or something. And we got back up to our stands and out of nowhere, he just said, I want to know how you can not drink.
Welcome to The Decision from Nashville EO, where you will hear the rest of the story after tough decisions were made by entrepreneurs who faced adversity and lived to tell about it.
Welcome to The Decision, the podcast by and for EO Nashville, where we talk to EO Nashville members as they build, grow, scale, sell businesses, and work with fellow EO members to figure out how to solve all the problems that happen in the course of business. I'm Eric Jackson, and with me as always, my partner in crime, to my left, Mr. Robert Hartline.
good to be here.
Glad to be here again. And our guest today, Mr. Greg Lemon with Acer Landscaping, which happened during the course of being a member of EO Nashville.
That's right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Good to see you both.
Yeah. So you're looking great, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you personally, because you were part of that journey. Absolutely were.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad to bring it on. It's like we got the triumvirate here. Robert served that same purpose for me. And that's, I don't know if you
Which
knew
is
this.
where I got the idea, because you were telling me about how Robert helped you, with your quest, your goal of becoming sober.
Yep.
And I said, you know what? If he helped you, you owe somebody. So I asked you, and you were more than happy to help me just sit in for, being a conscientious objector, I guess, and supportive party in my life. So it was awesome.
Glad to do it.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah. That's what EO is all about, right? Spread the love.
Yeah. It's on one of my talking points if it comes up.
Okay.
Yeah, that's more recent talking point, but yeah.
Have you noticed that people are paying more attention to you in terms of the sobriety journey? Like, have you noticed that?
Yes, I have. In fact, one of the coolest things for me was, I guess it was 5 months of sobriety or so. And I met my son at a football game in Mississippi State. He's a college student at Mississippi State. He'll be a junior this year. And we left to go get concessions. And I asked him, I said, do you want a beer? He's 20, most of he doesn't drink a lot. But I said, hey, just trying to be a cool dad. He's like, no, I just want a Coke. And I got a water or something. And we got back up to our stands and out of nowhere, he just said, I want to know how you can not drink. He said, because I feel like I'm pressured into drinking at school. And I literally was so thankful for that experience. It's just that opportunity for your 20-year-old to ask you for advice, to see you as a mentor in this area, to feel helpless in a group like a college campus where drinking is it's just status quo.
Mm-hmm.
So I have seen a lot of positive results in my family. My kids seem to be closer. Not that I ever was angry or was disruptive, in my habits, but I think they've learned to respect me in a different way.
That's
and
really
I'm
good
appreciative
that
of that.
Opened up to you about it too.
It was great. Like I said, it for a month I thought about that event, and even at the time, I remember thinking. I took a deep breath, and I was like, "All right, think about what you're about to say. Your son is listening, and it's hard to get teenagers or 20-somethings to listen." So I think it was a good conversation, and I think he felt supported. So.
It sounds like something that 50-year-old would say.
Yeah.
You know?
Or a 53-year-old.
Yeah.
So I might say it. Just kidding.
And that's common because a lot of people are like, how did you do it? Because they, in their head, I know, at least for me, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if is that okay? Is that okay?
That's the question I ask you. How did you do it?
Everybody wants to know, there's no Ozempic to fix that. It really does come down to, your willingness to want something, fighting against biological, pressures. Your body wants it, and all that. But then, standing up. But I wouldn't have gotten through it without Eric. He agreed to just meet with me weekly, just be a sponsor. I was in a formal. I did this for myself because I knew what I needed. And for me, I needed some serious accountability. So I joined this formal group and they suggested I had a mentor outside of the group. Eric was awesome. I asked him and he said yes right away. I was nervous about asking you, but you said yes. But I was also confident in asking you because we're part of, and I go into EO, but it's like you ask anybody in EO for things. It doesn't matter if it's your most vulnerable state in life. They're not going to judge you and they're going to say yes or no. And if they can't do it, they're going to help you find somebody that can. So yeah, it was like a lifeline I was throwing out to Eric and he grabbed it and it was what I needed.
Well, that's an example of the EO core values in when it meets the real world.
Yep.
That's just who we are. And when you asked me, I thought, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I jumped at the chance to do that.
Because it was great.
I know what it's done for me to not have alcohol in my life anymore.
Yep.
And so, gosh, to be there for somebody, a fellow EO member especially, and help guide. Yeah, it was a special time.
Yeah, I didn't feel so alone either. I mean, I think that's the other thing with EO. Every time I would go to the events, I would always drink because there was always drinking and there was always somebody drinking and my friend groups were always drinking. And so I really struggled with how do I get more involved in EO? How do I participate, show up better, but do it on my terms? And so I felt like I was a little bit outnumbered. I felt outnumbered in the odds that this would work, but it was just like, it started with Eric and then him telling me his story. And then the fact that Robert, he worked with you and you were supportive. And then I find out there's a lot of people in EO that are on similar journeys or want to be. And there's a respect for kind of that new.
How did the first couple of EO events feel not drinking?
Different.
Was it hard?
First football game was hard. First EO event was hard. Yeah. I mean, just in a sense that you're in a rhythm, you're used to a certain feeling. Like when I go to football, by the second half, I'm usually different than I was the first half because I've had 2 or 3 beers, right? So I'm like, and I'm acting stupid. So it's like getting to know a new part of you, and settling into who that person is, understanding who you are, sober, being thankful. I was always thankful after an event like that. Like I'm thankful I made it.
Oh yeah, driving back home when you hadn't drank.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, I'm going to sleep great tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to be hungover tomorrow.
You know what helped me is going to get water and have something to hold.
Yeah.
That was the thing that made the most difference to me. Because as long as I could do this action, I was good.
Well, we talked about that.
You did. Yeah.
I just get a club soda with lime. And nobody knows if that's water or vodka, and it made me feel better.
Yeah.
And nobody ever really asked. And I would tell people, and they go, oh, great. Good for you.
You told me that after. The reason you told me that, because I was sharing with you what happened to me in Fayetteville. So UT played Arkansas in Fayetteville last year for football, SEC rival, or no, it wasn't a rival, but my nephew goes to school or graduated recently from Arkansas. And I was like, hey, you want to go to the game together? He's like, that's great. And we end up going to the game. And then I'm hanging out with Patrick, my nephew, and we go to all these tailgates, and everybody has their tailgates down. Everybody's like, I mean, I couldn't walk a foot without somebody saying, you need a drink. you need a, like, I didn't have a drink. So they're like, you need a drink. And you're just like, just put something in a glass, walk around with it.
Yeah.
And that's what I do now. So it works. Yeah. As long as you have something.
Yeah.
Because misery loves company. I
went to the UT Texas A&M game. I guess it was last year, maybe the year before. And I was talking to this Texas A&M fan, and he tried to get me to drink, and I told him I quit. And then he started telling me his story and cried on me. And I gave him my card and I said, man, if you ever want to talk, just let me know. And on that note, I think I have been wanting to get a group together. We actually created a MyEO group, a sobriety group that we did a dry January with.
Yeah.
And I've tried a couple times. I'm the guy who can come up with ideas, but I'm not the guy to run it.
We need to absolutely revive that.
I think the three of us together.
This is a new commitment.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, and I left my group, my organized group, and one of the last things I told my counselor was, you know, how important EO has been in my life, and it's a big part of how I live, even, you know, professionally, personally. And I said, well, I said, hey, my sponsor was like telling me that there's life in EO for this type of a thing. Like we could actually do that. And there's been some attempts. And so I was pretty excited about it. And then I haven't really brought it up since, but it'd be great to do something. Cause I think there is a group of people that, you know, even if you just want to drink moderate, I mean, it's not like drinking it on its own is a bad thing. I don't condemn it. It's just, for me, it just got out of hand. So yeah, we should do that.
Okay.
So who was Greg before EO? What was your first business?
Oh gosh. I mean, you know, I was thinking about like prepping for this, which I have no notes. I don't need notes because it's just all stories. But you know, I mean, ever since I was a kid, I learned like at 6 and 7, like I can rake leaves and make money and do what I want with that money. I don't have to answer to my parents, right? So, I mean, I've always found ways to make money as a kid. And then I, you know, went off to college. The first time got a degree at UT Knoxville. Was then sort of a trajectory to be in the hotel and restaurant field like my dad was. My dad was an executive in a hotel resort company that brought us to Memphis, where I grew up, in Germantown, Tennessee, West Tennessee. Typical, you know, went to private school, upper middle class family. I was always driven. I worked in his hotels in high school. I just always worked. And then I went to college at UT, studied hotel restaurant, got a degree in it, was the president of the student association. And he did a lot of things. It was just, you know, fun stuff. And then I started off as a restaurant manager, did that for 3 or 4 years, and then went back to school, got my master's degree in accounting and pursued a degree in accounting, largely because my career didn't make my spouse particularly happy at the time. So she didn't like the hours. And even though she married me, it all of a sudden changed when we got married. So I swapped my hotel restaurant degree for a CPA and then started my career with Ernst & Young.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then became an entrepreneur, really, truly the first time working with craft CPAs. They owned 51% of a consulting group. It's an IT consulting where they represented different software publishers for ERP systems, CRM, business type applications. And I had so much fun. So I bought out the 13% that the previous owner held. Kraft owned 51%, and then I had 2 or 3, I think it was 3 minority partners along with me, and I was the managing partner.
When was that?
Oh, it was right around the banking crisis, right when that started, 2008.
Okay.
Because I bought it, I paid, you know, what was a formula that was relevant before the banking crisis, and then I learned a lot in that experience because 80% of our revenue in that business had to be resold. And I said, I'll never own a business where you have to resell revenue over and over and over and over. It was especially, you know, project-based work that sometimes took, sales cycle would be 1 year to 3 years, and then implementation. And, you know, it was just a very tenuous process. But I did that. I was successful. I mean, it was a good stint. We did have the banking crisis. All of my new business fell off. we just totally restructured our service offerings, created value in the program, in the applications we already serviced. And then people hired us to do like automation of AP, automation of AR, API integrations and things like that. So people were still spending money, but not on the big projects. But it actually gave us 2 of our strongest years. And I remember going home thinking, we're going to just bankrupt. I told my wife at the time, I was like, I may have made a huge mistake. I had no idea we were going to just lose all this business. But we made it through. It's my first time. Yeah.
I sold a business to Kraft and was there at Kraft Technology Group from 2000 to 2003. I don't remember if we talked about that or not.
I think we did, but I was pretty close with Kraft KTG, at the time, sort of close. Kraft always wanted there to be more synergies between the accounting practice, what you were doing and what we were doing, selling the applications. I don't think we ever got there. Yeah. But it was always a one of those things that they had hoped for. But we did have to do some cross selling.
Yeah, I did learn Excel while I was at Kraft.
Did you?
I think that's a non-negotiable in the accounting world, right?
Yeah.
Well, now you don't even need to learn Excel.
No.
I learned Excel like in school for accounting. Yeah. It's like, if you don't know Excel, you're not going to be able to work. So now I write my letters in Excel.
Who were you before EO?
Before EO, I'm just really the person I've always been, just super ambitious, very purposeful, very driven, goal-oriented. I felt less accountable back in those days. EO gives me a feeling of some accountability to my forum, which I like. And it also is a great avenue for me to be able to vent, discuss issues that my friends that aren't in an ownership position just don't understand. So I feel all of that kind of comes in as like feeling more structured, like it's part of my life. But same guy, just a little bit, didn't feel as confident maybe.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how we have these sets of friends that are entrepreneur friends and then our prior friends?
Yeah.
It's just so different to be around with someone that is doing a 9-to-5 or
different problems.
So different to talk. Different conversation.
Yeah, it is. And I started with EO. Do you want me to tell you a little bit about how I got here?
Yeah, that was the next question.
So I launched my CPA firm in 2014. And I started working for Ben Mankin, who is an EO member in Nashville. He owns a business called Mankin Media Systems. And I started working as a fractional CFO for Ben, and he told me about Catalyst. Now, previous to that, I had heard of YPO. So the person that I bought out at Kraft, she was a member of YPO, Dallas Wilt. A lot of people might know the Wilts. Christie Cookie Company is the one, that's his company or whatever was anyway. But Dallas was great. And she told me about YPO, and then Ben told me about Catalyst. And honestly, I was like, I don't have time to even, I couldn't even imagine joining something that was in Nashville at the time because my business was in South Franklin, Columbia area. But I joined it. And then I sat through the 18-month process, did our, had a great forum experience, Catalyst forum experience, and then joined EO, I think in 2018, I think is when I officially joined as a member. So
what would you say the biggest decision you had to navigate being an EO?
Biggest decision, I think I know where you're going with this question. The biggest, it wasn't necessarily a decision, but it was one of the areas that EO helped me the most. Is that fair to answer that question? Yeah. I went through my family life fell apart. So my wife and I had experienced issues for years, and then she had some issues with her employer that led her to file a civil suit against the school system. She was fired. It was a horrible, it is a travesty, say the least. But but that took our marriage out. It was a lot of things, but it took our marriage out. And then you have COVID right in the middle of everything. So, you hate to do this to your forum because we like to be balanced between personal and business, but I was 95% personal. I had all sorts of business issues either, but this was big. I mean, I've been married for 26 years at the time, and it's like, gosh, I can't even imagine. But I had a lot of support with that, and true support. I was expecting people to say, "Hey, look, can we not talk about? Can you bring up something different in forum than something that's going on in your divorce?" But they never did, and that was huge. Yeah, it was it was a 3-year period too, so it was a lot of support.
Yeah, a lot of fear and a lot of just navigating different challenges.
100%.
Yeah.
Who I found my attorney, how to find an attorney. I actually used I interviewed several, but I ended up with somebody a member that I respected highly, had worked with, just everything. The process of getting divorced. I mean, some people have been divorced multiple times. This is my first and hopefully only time to go through a divorce. It was miserable. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of loneliness. I can't even imagine not having a network of people.
Was there any books or anything that helped you navigate that?
The divorce?
Yeah. Was there anything in particular that you got a lot of peace out of during that, or?
There was a book, and I cannot think of the author, but it was a book written by an author that talked about estranged relationships with kids. And I can find out, and we can add to this podcast later, but it was great. It's a New York Times bestseller. And that's what happened to me is when my wife and I split up, my 2 kids it was like deer in headlights to both of them. Even though they saw it coming and supported me, told me they supported me, it was like the reality of dad leaving home was really hard on them. And my daughter sort of went into this estranged bucket. She never talked to me. She just kind of kept quiet. She was in college. She wasn't even in Tennessee. She was in Kentucky at the time. But that book was helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not a whole lot of reading, just survival. Most of that time.
Especially, it's super hard too when you're trying to navigate a business at the same time. You're trying to do both. You're trying to juggle, keeping the business afloat while you're at the weakest point of your existence.
Not freak your employees out.
Yeah, it's just hard to be a good leader too when you're going through it.
Yeah, you can't show that side of. You have to pretend like everything's the same, and I did that. I've always been good about separating from personal from business. It's hard with a small business, but I've always drawn the line. For some reason, I don't know why. I've always been very conservative on that. So I had people that were close. They knew I cared for them. They knew that I was there for them, provided for them. But that was kind of where it ended. I'd always leave parties, like firm parties, early, let them party on. I'd do my thing, leave after an hour. But I had a second command that I built up. And she stepped in and really helped out with the business.
How early in the business did you discover you needed a second in command?
So my great idea was to save my marriage, was to take my family on a road trip around the United States. So in 2019, right before COVID, with 2018, I started training a second in command, knowing that in 2019, in the summer, I was going to take my family on an RV trip and be gone for 2 months. So it was planned. I mean, I actually planned to educate and train the second in command. Her name was Stephanie. She's wonderful, wonderful person, very smart. She was excited about it. She picked up on it. And then I was able to leave on that trip, which didn't work, by the way. But there was it was fun though. I drove 14,000 miles that summer. I bought a Ford F-250 and this 36-foot travel trailer, and I pulled it to Richmond and then all the way to Washington State and then down to Colorado, and then I came home. So we hit like 16 national parks. I recommend it, but I would recommend it to people with the RV, the actual RV that you drive, because the campers are really tough. less comfortable for that much driving.
Yeah.
But it was a good time.
Yeah.
And so now you're in the landscaping business. How did that come about?
Yeah. So goes my my marriage, and so went my business. She didn't like the idea of which I don't. I was fine with. I fought it for a long time, but she just wanted to get paid out on half the value of my business, and I sold it to a local firm. And I went back to being Greg, which is a CPA that does a lot of consulting work. I work a lot with businesses, CFO type work, buying, selling businesses. And lo and behold, I got a call from somebody that said, "Hey, I want you to help me sell my business." And he was referred to me through a guy that I knew that was a CPA too. And I said, "Great, this is wonderful. I love this work." So I tucked in as a fractional. It was a kind of a private sale. He didn't want his people to know. So I just showed up one day, and I would spend 2 or 3 days a week in the business, just layered in as a CFO, but doing my work, understanding the business, doing some of the diligence that it would take to prepare, kind of an offer sheet, and got to the end of that process and said, "Gosh, this is really a good business. Like, I've seen a lot of businesses, but this is I think it's a really good one." So I'm so glad you asked this question, because here I am coming out of a divorce. I get this job. I spend 8 months working in it. I come up with a valuation, and I'm like, the valuation's low, but it doesn't have to be. Had to do with certain events that could be changed over time to increase the valuation. And I said, I know how to do that. I can move the revenue source from construction to maintenance. And then it's now, instead of a 2 or 3x, you're looking at like 6 to 12x right now.
Retainer,
PE's paying.
essentially, at that point.
Yeah, because it's contract work. Just get more contract work and less construction work.
Yeah.
But even believing so much in my plan, I wasn't confident making that decision alone. So I went to 2 forum mates that I really had a lot of respect for, and I asked them both, like, here's what I got. Here's my due diligence. This is what I'm thinking. Should I do it? And I told both of them, I'm not going to do this without your permission. Like, I didn't feel qualified to make a decision in my life. And I didn't know. And so I was like, I need somebody that is qualified to look objectively at something, who knows me, that can help me make this decision. The first guy that I talked to was like, he just said, "Well, hell yeah, this is great." I was like, "Well, think about it. It's too soon, right?" And he's like, "No, I think it's great." And he said, "I've got a friend that's been in landscaping for a long time. I'll hook you up with him. You can experience, he can experience share." Like, that's perfect. So David hooked me up with this guy. I talked to him. He was super nice, friendly. And then the second guy that I called on was Sam Sanchez, who was also in my forum, somebody that I have a lot of respect for. He's fantastic. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy. Everybody that knows Sam knows that he's just a fun guy. He's a good guy. And so I gave him the same spiel and said, "I need your permission to buy it." And all he said was, "I want in." And I was like, that's not why you're here. But then I got thinking about it. I was like, this would be good. Somebody that, is further along in their career, that has his experience, wants to be a silent partner. So he and I went in 50-50 on that business. And it's been fun. And I think he's really enjoyed it too, because Sam, he's into the restaurant business. Yeah. He's got the Sam's Place and Sports Bar and Sperry's. Yep. And restaurants have been his life. And that was one of the things that I'd heard him say a few times about just wanted to do something different. It's like you get enough money and you've got your money in the S&P and the Dow Jones, you got your money out there, but it's not fun. There's nothing fun about that. So I think he enjoys being part of it. He likes the business, and it's a fun business, a lot more fun than accounting.
Well, I think it's interesting to go back a little bit and think about having to navigate a divorce and losing your business, essentially.
Yeah.
And having to let go of all that energy to grow something, and all of a sudden you're having to let go of that too. A book that I read when I sold my business, when I was in this, I guess, feeling grief of losing the business. I read 3 Marriages, and it talks about your relationship with self, with your spouse, and then your purpose. And to lose 2 of those, 2 of the 3, that had to have been a challenge. Did you feel like starting? What did it feel like to start over?
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was all overwhelming because in addition to, it's one thing to say, I want to have half the value of the business. That's one thing to say that, right? And I could say, sure. But that just that one statement leads to, a forensic dive into my accounting firm and the other businesses that I had going, real estate businesses, and like the search for fraud and all this stuff that just took out just hundreds of hours of time. And then I owned a commercial building where my CPA firm was one of 3 tenants in that building, and had to sell it, had to sell the building, had to sell the business. So I had to find a buyer. I had to find, and I didn't have to find a buyer for the building, but I did anyway. Because
you're finding a buyer under duress.
Right. Yeah. And so when I received the offer from the accounting firm, I was like underwhelmed with the offer. And it was a very emotional time because I was just like, gosh, this thing is it's just more consequences of the timing of this that were tough. But again, it's all good. It's all good. And it was good because I had support. And, sometimes, you got a really good friend when you could just bitch about something and they just listen without judgment. And I love it. I look back at that and I'm like, I'm so thankful that I had people I could call and not worry about that call going somewhere else. Right. Cause that's, you're really, in that period of time, you're watching your phone. Like, it's just weird. All these attorneys, and you're just like freaked out over, like, all of a sudden you feel like you're in a separate world trying to navigate life.
Well, I think what because I'm sitting here looking at what you're doing and going, you bought a functioning, good business,
right, that
you can make better, which is far easier than making nothing into something.
Yes.
Yeah. So it and you felt like you could make a difference with the landscaping company, which is
yes, I still do. I mean, it's still a great opportunity and it's a fun business. I mean, I love the fact that, Acer averages 110 to 20 employees. Okay. Like this summer we'll be at around 160 with some temp agencies and stuff like that, just to get through some peak times. But I forget what I was talking about. What was I saying? Can't remember.
I'm not sure where.
Taking the business from just starting from scratch. Right. Well, so I guess where I was going is I spent most of my career in professional services, like as an operator. Not that I didn't work with other businesses that were in other industries, but that was my personal experience with professional services, where our workforce has degrees, usually advanced degrees. The salaries are huge. It's just the whole aptitude. Everything about that employee is different than 90% of my employees. And I just have learned, I've learned so much with Acer, but one of the things I've really learned is to appreciate people. Like, I have people my age, Hispanics, that come into work in their 50s and they work 10-hour days and they don't complain. They never complain. They're just happy. They're just happy to have work. And they're trustworthy and they do good work. Not that everybody does, but it's taught me that. It's restored my confidence, and it's also given me a different perspective on the workforce.
It's a totally different leadership style that you're dealing with now with the type of people that you work with than you did before, isn't it?
So what I do for Acer is different than anything I've done before because I've always had a role in the company. So when I bought Acer with Sam, I didn't have a role. The CFO, we had a CFO, we had a president, we had, the revenue to support them. So, where I am now is trying to find people through EO that have made an investment in a business where they are the managing partner. I'm responsible for the success of this business to my business partner, right? And trying to understand and navigate, because it's tricky, right? It's tricky. I can't just go in and implement change because I can't take my president's authority away, and I can't do things that make my CFO feel not supported and then show up every day and work 110%. So it's a little bit different role that I'm learning on a small scale, like Acer. Acer's $15 million a year in revenue. It's not a huge business, but it's the same elements I think you would have in any position where smaller company and and you've got this issue of you're an owner but you're not an operator.
So it's more influence than command.
Yeah, like I said, I have not figured it out.
Yeah.
Clearly, I've been looking for folks that have experienced that. Now I'm in an area that's a little bit less. There's fewer people that are around, but I honestly haven't looked into all of EO.
But you're really forced into working on it because you're not in
right.
it.
I'm always working on it. Yeah. I'm always working on it. Yeah. Which is great.
What would be your advice for a new EO member starting out on how to get the most of their EO experience?
So this is about their EO experience?
Yeah.
So much has changed, Robert, as you know, and Eric, you too, having been around for 8 to 10 plus years. I think now more than ever, as we've really enjoyed the growth of EO, we've enjoyed spreading this cheer around to more people. I think the key now, and it was then too, but less important then, is just get out. I mean, we have amazing, between Samira and the ladies that put together our programming. I mean, it's amazing what we have in front of us to be exposed to other members. So I think you get out, be engaged. EO, it's like the more I put into EO, the more I get out of it. It is amazing. I actually get more out of it. It's not, it's like you put in 1, but you get 3 back. It's almost like it's just, but all you got to do is just put in, just make yourself there, put yourself in there. I'm not saying join a committee. I mean, that's great too, but I'm just saying be available. Just show up for events, talk to people, get to know them, and enjoy it.
Right.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Awesome. If you are an entrepreneur here in Nashville, Tennessee, and you're looking for a community of other driven entrepreneurs that are navigating their personal lives and business lives, you may want to visit eonashville.com and learn how over 350 business leaders in Nashville get together in what we call Forum every single month and grow and elevate together here in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks for watching and hope you have a fantastic rest of your week.
Thanks for listening to the Decision Podcast by Nashville EO. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.